Um, college football one. Who had the better year, Cam or Joe Burrow?
Ooh.
I say Cam
Damn.
because of what he had around him in Auburn on the offensive side. It was nothing comparable to what Joe Burrow had. I mean, I can name you the players he had in Auburn from Darvin Adams, Emery Blake, Terrell Zachary, Cody Burns. I mean, Cody Burns was the former quarterback of Auburn before Cam. Rest his soul, Philip Lutzenkirchen. They had Michael Dyer, who was a true freshman at the time, broke Bro Jackson's freshman record for the most rushing yards by an Auburn Tiger. Mario Fannin, Ontario McCaleb. The second best player without question was Nick Fairley. But Cam,
Yeah.
30 touchdowns on the air, 20 touchdowns on the ground, including a receiving touchdown, undefeated, clearly the Heisman, but also the controversy that he and Cecil, his father, was in the play-for-play scandal during that time. Remember the allegations of him taking money allegedly from Mississippi State was like 180,000. And for Cam to still do that and win with that Superman on his cape. And of course, who can anyone forget that victory against Alabama?
Oh my
Yeah,
gosh.
come back winning the Iron Bowl.
Dante
Yeah.
Hightower, Marcel Darius. I mean, they had some good. I mean,
Yeah,
and then on
that
the
was
offensive side, yeah,
that
and
was
you had
that was peak out. That was peak Alabama defense.
Mark Ingram, you had Trent Richardson there, you had Julio Jones there. They were up 24-7, Alabama, and Auburn came back, and Cam was a primary reason.
Yeah.
And of course, the SEC championship game, hit Cam's Heisman moment, that 49-yard touchdown run at LSU. Remember how that run he had, and then how Patrick Peterson was still grabbing him, and he was still able to cross the ball into the end zone.
Yes, indeed.
I take nothing away from what Joe Burrow, one of the most prolific passing seasons I've ever seen. But what Cam had to do with the lack of talent he had compared to Burrow, and with the controversy that he and Auburn was dealing with, and Auburn, it took them a couple of years in order for them to get back to a national championship.
Yeah.
But they were, but without Cam, are they winning a game? Or are they even getting that far? Because we saw what they were before Cam. So I
I
got to
don't
give Cam.
I don't think I don't think that Auburn team is a bowl eligible team with a quarterback not named Cam Newton. This is what I'll say, and this comes to the argument of we've made this argument before. We talked about it before, and it's the better. It's like this the better numbers and the more valuable argument. I mean, anybody with common sense will tell you the Joe Burrow season from a number standpoint is a far better season. But if you're looking at the value of the player in the system that he's in and the talent that's around him, if you want to say more valuable season, it's Cam Newton all day. 10 times out of 10, it's the more valuable season I feel like is Cam Newton because of what Auburn was, around him. You can make a case the second, third, and fourth best players on that Auburn team were all on the defensive side of the ball. You can make a case. And shoot, honestly, probably more than that because that Auburn defense was loaded back then. Don't get it twisted. But
Josh
Cam
Burns.
Newton, exactly. But what Cam Newton did, just as far as basically being like the fire starter for that offense, just basically being just jolting everything that Auburn team was like. I feel like in terms of if you wanted to create like a Mount Rushmore of greatest college quarterback seasons in the history of college football, Cam Newton is in that Cam Newton 2010 or whatever. Yeah, that Cam Newton 2010, that is in my Mount Rushmore of greatest college QB seasons of all time. Because that is the greatest carry job in the history of college football, and we ain't seen nothing like it since. And
Yeah.
his value to that team, that offense was just through the roof. Because honestly, I feel like the only other notable guy that I think that really remotely did a little bit of anything in the NFL was probably Michael Dyer. I think he did make it, but he didn't do that much. But yeah, I think the more valuable season, if we're gonna go value, it's Cam Newton all day. Because I mean, you look at what Joe Burrow had at LSU. I mean, he had Jamar Chase, he had Justin Jefferson, he had Terrace Marshall was his 3, he had Clyde Edwards-Helaire
Hilaire.
back. He had
Thaddeus
Clyde
Moore.
Edwards-Helaire as his running back. Yeah, I mean that was he had talent on top of talent on top of talent. I mean, what I will give Joe Burrow is this. Because a lot of times people will say, "Oh, you could have put any quarterback in that scheme, and they would have put up numbers." You have to look at the system, and you have to look at how it was run, and you have to look at the style of quarterback you needed to play in that system in order for it to truly thrive like that. Joe Burrow, I don't know how many quarterbacks could have came in with his type of skill set and really pop off like that. So I give kudos to Joe from that standpoint, because I don't think a lot of quarterbacks could have ran that system with the efficiency that Joe Burrow did in 2019. But if you're looking at better in terms of just who had the more valuable season and who are you going to remember more, I'm gonna say Cam. I'm gonna take Cam too.
Champ.
I'm gonna go off on a limb since both of y'all said Cam, and I'm gonna say Joe. Reason I'm gonna say that is because if you really look at the players that he played, now this is not taken away from Cam Newton's season. People talk about how talented that team in LSU was, but think about all of the NFL ready teams that they faced themselves, especially that Alabama team that they face. Look at the Georgia team that they faced. Look at the Georgia Bulldogs. They had three Pro Bowlers at the running back position on there. There's a lot of those players that played on those teams. They're in the NFL right now. We could go down the list. When they played Oklahoma, Jalen Hurts is on that team. A lot of the players, Jalen Hurts is on that team. Trevor Lawrence is on that team. Trevor Lawrence, when they played him in the national championship, he's in the NFL right now. He's Pro Bowl. When you think about Alabama, remember the most NFL players that ever got drafted was from November the 9th of that 2019 year, because they faced the number 3 team in Alabama, and Alabama was just as loaded that year. They was just as loaded. You think about Auburn that year, they were loaded. We think about Florida, they were loaded. Texas, they were loaded. So I think that the real reason why they get so much credit for how good they were was the talent that they were able to play against and overcome. Like I said, look at the Alabama team that they played. Look at the Alabama team that they played. Probably the most NFL players that we're ever going to see play against each other in college. Because in that 20 draft, you had Tua Tagovailoa, you had Jarek Willis, you had Henry Ruggs, Jared Jeudy, Xavier McKinney, Trayvon Diggs, Raquan Davis, Terrell Lewis, Anthony Jennings. Those are just the guys who just got drafted the very next year. Those are just the guys who got drafted the very next year. Let's just go to the roster. Then you had Mac Jones on that roster. Then you also had Najee Harris. You had Brian Robinson Jr.
Henry Ruggs III.
You had a little bit of everybody on that roster. So they face just as much talent that they had. I know people love to blow it up. Oh, yeah, this team, they face just as much talent. The Alabama team had that year alone, that 2019 year in college football, that shaped the NFL as we see it now. Because a lot of the star players from that season, from LSU included, shaped the NFL as we see it right now. Brian Robinson, he's a star. Trevor Lawrence, a lot of those guys, even guys who we still have yet to see that the verdict is still out on. Those 2019 teams that they played against, all of those guys, all of those teams, especially the top 25 teams that they played, all of them have stars in the NFL right now. They shaped the NFL. They shaped the NFL. So as much talent as they have had, they faced just as many teams with just as much talent as they had. They was just able to outperform them. Let's not forget when they faced Jalen Hurts in the college football playoffs, they faced Lincoln Riley they faced him along with Lincoln Riley in the air raid system. They faced him along with Lincoln Riley in the air raid system. And if I could go back to it at this point, let me go back to that team that they was able to beat. It was Jalen Hurts on that team. And hold on. Spencer Rattler was on the bench.
Yeah, I think you had CeeDee Lamb, you had Hollywood Brown.
Yes. Let me make sure that's on the team. Yes, you had CeeDee Lamb, you had Marquell Jones, you had Hollywood Brown. Drake Stoops was on that team. So you had just as many weapons as Marquise Brown. Yeah, a little bit of everybody was on that team. So as much talent as they had, they faced just as much. Like I said, that Alabama team that they faced, more than half of that team is in the NFL right now. More than half of that team. I mean, they faced just as much talent as they had. They was just outplaying everybody. When you beat the most top 25 teams in history, you do that for a reason. That Clemson team was stacked. The Clemson team was stacked.
So was the Oklahoma team.
Yeah, the Oklahoma team, the Georgia team, half of those, like I said, all of those teams that Joe Burrow and the 2019 LSU Tigers faced, all of those teams have a plethora of players in the NFL right now. That season alone in college football was monumental for the NFL for the amount of talent that they put, that entire draft class put in there. So just as much talent as the LSU Tigers may have had that year, they beat just as many teams that had talent on the same par as they did.
True, but at the same time, no one is arguing or denying that, champ. But again, the value, as the BRF's point, and shout out to Trent because he's made this argument. Shout out to Donnie and them, but to Trent's point, and this is why the reason why you can make all year. To me, he did it the best because that carry job. If you take away Cam Newton out of the equation, would Auburn get that far? You mentioned now carry job, big fella, because wait a minute, like you said with Josh Allen.
Yeah.
If you take Cam out of the equation, how would Auburn be? Because
6 that year at best.
And plus Cam also with controversy as well to still be able to produce while you're dealing with the controversy. Because again, a lot of people hated, particularly Alabama. Remember what they used to call Cam Newton? They called him Scam Newton.
Scam Cam.
Yeah.
Yeah, and they used to hate the fact that he used to, because he didn't talk to the media for a long time, he used to hold hand over his mouth. So, yeah. And I agree with the carry job situation. But like I said, everybody was going to the Cam route. I just want to be different and go the Joe Burrow route. Because
there's nothing wrong with that. Ain't nothing
as much talent as he had. People always talk about how loaded that team was loaded. If you go back and look at the teams, especially, do you remember how good the Georgia Bulldogs was back in 2019? We thought we was going to the national championship that year.
Yeah, until they ruined y'all chances in the SEC championship.
They came out there and beat the shit out of us and then beat us for shit. So,
and let's not forget what they did to my Oklahoma Sooners, and let's not forget what they did to. But it's happened. That team was stacked, and we knew that LSU. First of all, I knew LSU was going to whoop Georgia's ass because they already beat them before. LSU was going to get that revenge again, even if it was at the Mercedes-Benz Stadium. Yeah. Then Oklahoma. Why do you think Lincoln Riley left Oklahoma to go to USC, champ? Oklahoma was on the verge of going to the SEC. He didn't want to deal with that SEC smoke.
And he didn't fare very, very well at USC either, because the thing was, he went. I'm just gonna go ahead and say it. I'm an SEC guy to the core. Georgia bred, Georgia fed, and when I die, I'm gonna be Georgia dead. But you left the SEC and went to an even harder, ended up in even harder division. So I mean,
Exactly.
And
You ran.
because he didn't think that was gonna happen. But once
He
USC went to the Big Ten,
ran from the USC and then gets to the Big Ten and then like, oh damn.
now I'm
Okay,
in
we
an
left
emergency
we
situation.
left one deep we left one conference that plays good defense, and then I just decided, hey, I'm gonna just go to a conference that arguably plays even better defense. Oh, great, good job.
Hey, in the
And then
great word,
you can't even recruit defense to save your life.
yeah, tried to get to heaven, but went straight to hell. You know,
but you can't go wrong with either one, because although Burrow still had to do, and again he had to depart from Ohio State, which was tough because again he was like a 4-star, 3-star, 4-star recruit, and the quarterbacks, they were loaded at the time.
yeah, they were. They had I think it was they had Braxton, they had God rest his
JT
soul.
Barrett,
Yeah,
Cardell Jones, I think.
yeah, they had a lot of guys, but you
But
know,
because he left Florida and there was no chance in hell he was going to start over Tebow. Then he had that controversy with the computer situation. He went to Blinn Junior College, was able to win a national championship there, and then in Auburn. I mean, think about it. Had it not been for Cam Newton being the number 1 overall pick, had Andrew Luck entered the draft champ, Andrew Luck would have easily been the number 1 overall pick. And Cam also had a lot to prove coming out of college because, again, all the criticism, the skepticism about him, only 1 year, 21 touchdowns, 14 rushing TDs, first rookie quarterback in NFL history to throw for over 4,000 yards, considering all the criticism, the skepticism about him. And plus, I say Cam had more valuable season because, again, with that less talent around him in Auburn, and to do it in that type of conference, you had, and let's not forget South Carolina too. They had Alshon Jeffrey, Marcus Lattimore, the running back before the knee injury. He was a damn good running back for the Gamecocks. And remember how they dominated them in the SEC championship game? And how he was able to do that. Just the dual threat. I mean, it's a really tough decision. I can understand Champ because just like Burrow, he had to deal with a bunch of competition while having the squad. But if you look at what Cam had to go through during that time, being the best player on that team and not having that amount of talent, and to still put up crazy numbers, 30 on the air, 20 on the ground, including 1 receiving TD.
That would have been very, very interesting. But to your point, if Andrew Luck would have came out, I took some time to look at it, because Cam Newton went number 1, Von Miller went number 2.
And that 2011 draft class, still arguably one of the best draft classes
of all time. Yes, I agree 100%. But it would have been interesting to see if him and Andrew Luck would have came out that same year, because the thing is, Buffalo still didn't have a quarterback. So would they have taken Marcel Darius, or would they have taken Cam Newton?
Do you think that the Broncos would have taken Cam Newton because John Elway?
Yes, they probably would have.
Possibility.
No, but yes, possibility. You moved on from Josh McDaniels, and Josh McDaniels was responsible for Tim Tebow going to Denver.
Yeah, and by that time the verdict was out on it. And look, they had a lot of Pro Bowlers there at during that time. They had Champ Bailey, he was still rocking. They had Elvis Dumerville. They had 2
Willis
bookies. Willis McGahee, Brian Dawkins was still doing his thing out there, and Ryan Clady. So it would have been interesting to see if they would have came out in the same year if they would have said, okay, we've had enough of the Tebow experiment at this point. We need to get a real quarterback in here and take a Cam Newton. And it kind of would have been poetic justice, too, because, he started over Cam in college. So, but that would have been very, very interesting. But I take Joe Burrow's season because, like I stated, not taking anything away from Cam. And like I said, I want to be different. I want to be difficult. But I'll say, like I stated, as much talent as the LSU Tigers had, a lot of the teams they faced, especially that Alabama, that team, that Georgia team, the Oklahoma team, the Clemson teams, just as much talent as they had, they faced teams with just as much talent as they did. They just overwhelmed them at the end of the day, and they was just the undisputed best team. Like I stated, if you go back and look at that Alabama team as an example, they will tell you that was the most NFL ready game in the history of college football. No game in the history of the NFL, in the history of college, produced more NFL players than that one game. Yeah. So when you think about the talent that the LSU Tigers had, the talent that Alabama had, the talent that Georgia had, even Florida that year, Auburn had talent that year. Everybody who they played virtually in the top 25 had talent. They just overwhelmed everybody. They just beat the hell out of them. So guess what? They had just as much talent as everyone else. Everyone else was on the even playing field. It was just LSU that year was just so much better, and they had the better quarterback.
Go ahead, BRF.
No, I just want to make one quick point before we go into the next last topic. No, that LSU team was so good in the national championship game. Falcons fans were mad that we drafted AJ Terrell in the first round, that draft, because of what LSU did to him in the national championship game. AJ Terrell is the top 10 cornerback. Fans were mad that they took AJ Terrell after what Jefferson and Chase did to him in that national title game. That's how good that LSU team was. Falcons fans were pissed off that they took AJ Terrell. And AJ Terrell's the top 10 corner in the league.
Not to mention there was another player from LSU, Derek Stingley.
Derek Stingley was first. Yeah, I think Derek Stingley was on that squad too. And now he's like top 5, top 10 corner in the league. So just, man, it was just crazy.
But for me, I say Cam because what he was able to do. And other than him, can you really name any player from that Auburn team outside of Nick Fairley who really transitioned to the NFL? Because a lot of them, UPS, FedEx guys, working 9-to-5 jobs like the rest of us. Can you really name one off the top of your head from that Auburn team outside of Nick Fairley that transitioned into the NFL? Maybe Josh Burns, because I know he used to play for the Baltimore Ravens.
Mm-hmm. Nick Fairley.
That's it.
And even,
that's it, to be honest.
Even with Nick Fairley, you got to credit a lot of his success, to him playing alongside Dominican too.
Yes.
Yeah, in Detroit, exactly.
Yes. But with Cam, if you take away Cam out of the equation at Auburn, how would they be? And plus, LSU would also transition, what also made them so lethal, the change of offense. They went from running the football to passing the football. Considering the type of quarterback you have with that loaded talent, you had to unleash. Mm-hmm. But with Cam, if you take away Cam out of the equation, how would Auburn's offense be with those types of players? Now, Cam, if you put him in LSU's offense, no, I don't believe Cam would have done exactly what Joe Burrow have done. But would Joe Burrow have done what Cam done at Auburn?
No.
So there you go. But again, it's a really good debate, though. Love it, though.